Welcome back to Federal Insights Employee Experience, sponsored by Salesforce here on Federal News Network. My guest today is Casey Coleman. She's the Senior Vice President for Digital Transformation for Global Public Sector at Salesforce, and I'm Tom Temin, your moderator. And before the break, we were talking about the idea of the modernized, connected employee experience. Let's go through some of the steps that agencies should take to modernize the experience they offer employees.
As I said earlier, Tom, this is an issue that is grounded in technology and the art of the possible with what digital cloud platforms can now do. But it also involves thinking about processes differently, really thinking from the outside in, from the point of view of the end user, whether that end user is a customer, a citizen, a resident, or a constituent, or if that user is an employee. They're a customer as well. And so thinking about the journey that they go on and the process that is the connected processes that help them to get their work done and help them fulfill the mission. And then beyond that, issues of culture and of leadership are really important because these are the kind of things that leaders set the tone and they establish the priorities. And creating an environment where people can do their best work is one of the most important things a leader can do. And so I don't want to leave that part out. It really is, at the end of the day, a critical leadership responsibility. And you see in the survey results of most engaged employees that it is a priority that the culture and the leadership come around and support.
If the top leadership does have that desire to engage, that tends to filter down in the way that other people, their attitudes toward incoming employees and towards one another, as well as towards maybe the investments in the way they tailor their systems to carry that out, that vision of high engagement.
It does. Leadership creates an environment where these kind of initiatives can flourish. And so I want to think for a minute about not just the employee onboarding experience and the employee service experience, but also the mission delivery experience. Almost anything you do as a government worker involves collaborating with someone else, oftentimes across organizational boundaries and in different departments. And historically, that has been really hard to do. And so we have defaulted to the universal thing that everyone has, which is email or sometimes shared drives. But what we're working with customers to do now is a digital headquarters concept where you can collaborate easily, seamlessly, and in a way that is connected across organizational boundaries. And so, for example, if you need to connect with others in your horizontal community, in the CIO community or the Chico community, you have the ability now to do that and to work across those boundaries. And so that's the kind of thing that is enabled by systems, but it also involves understanding that collaboration, case management, records management, all of these kind of things can be sped up, improved, and delivered in a way that's personal, that's integrated, and connected.
And that sounds especially important now when people are not gathered under one roof, commuting and parking and going into a building, but they could be anywhere. So in a sense, that emphasizes the virtual space, whether it's within the agency or, as you point out, cross-agency or multi-agency collaboration. Those spaces that are virtual take front and center over whether the person happens to be at a cubicle in an agency or at a dining room table at home.
We are not going back to the office the way we were 3 years ago. That absolutely has fundamentally changed. And I think it's a positive development. It means that we can get talented people who can live and work from anywhere. And it starts to create opportunity for historically underserved markets, places where people can now contribute to their communities in different ways and still work for the government. But it also means that the hybrid workforce is now the status quo. So people who have made that pivot already are seeing the benefits, and those who are still in the middle of that pivot fortunately can move quickly. It doesn't take a long time. You've got to start with the end in mind and take a small segment of a project and deliver it quickly. The other thing that has changed is agile development, and agile and secure platform-oriented development where you can put out a MVP, a minimal viable product, and let people start to use it and let them give you feedback and then start to move forward from there. and not wait until years have elapsed to hopefully put something into production.
And that points to something that sounds mundane, but really gets to the heart of the whole matter. And that is forms, because the government, no less than any other sector, is forms driven, whether it's SF 86 and you've got 150 pages of questions, or whatever it is to be onboarded or to create a memorandum of agreement, a million use cases. But the government seems behind in forms digitization, which would just seem to open up lots of vistas for improving everyone's experience. So what about forms and documents?
Forms is a great example of where the cloud can play a decisively improved role. You're right. Everything in the government comes down to forms. And if you look at just the hiring process, at one agency, we found that they had 4 different forms that required virtually the same information. And it had to be re-entered over and over again because these forms didn't share the underlying data. And so we worked with them to automate those forms, to break them down into the components, and the information only had to be entered once. And then it could be used in workflows and automated and create an experience that is, on the user's end, seamless and personalized. And I want to add that these forms contain important personally identifiable information, PII. And so for that purpose, our GovCloud is the perfect solution. We have partnered with Amazon Web Services, with AWS, to run a government-specific enclave so that the information is secure, it's FedRAMP High certified, it has the scale, the speed, and the security that you need as a government employee to make sure that that information is protected and that those forms can be used confidently and knowing that the information is secure.
And of course, employees come to organizations with a heightened sense of the value and the need to protect their own data now. I think that's kind of part of the atmosphere. And one of the other issues that came to the fore during the early part of COVID, when people were forced to telework, but as you say, it's going to stick around, that's the whole idea of training and wellness. I remember one agency realized that people were under stress because they were not in the office and everyone was learning this new mode of work, which has become routine now. So she, as the Chico for a large department, instituted a variety of wellness programs that were also virtual, but nevertheless they felt relieve the stress. And then there's the training issue. And government always cuts training because training involved travel and being in person. All of that is totally obsolete. So maybe comment briefly on the training and wellness piece of this whole connected experience, this whole platform-based way of working.
It is amazing how creative people have become through COVID to create strategies and tactics to remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Even though we've been in multiple sprints as we've dealt with changing conditions through this pandemic, you still can't burn out. You've got to keep going. And so, for example, one of the programs that Salesforce has launched, which has been super helpful, is it's called Be Well, and they bring in different experts every week for a 30-minute virtual segment. It's open to the public to talk about nutrition and sleep and managing stress and managing blurred boundaries between work and home. Because as good as hybrid work can be, it also means that the boundary between work and home life has blurred. And so you need new strategies for that. And so now we have the ability to deliver these kind of personalized, bite-sized tactics that help people with very practical ways to address wellness and resiliency over the long term.
All right. So in the couple of minutes we have left, your best advice for agencies that want to get started or to accelerate their move toward a modernized employee experience.
I think the first thing to do is to start with the end user in mind, start with the employee in mind, and think about their experience and consider a digital cloud services platform. Tackle a small part of the project first. Maybe it is the recruiting and onboarding process. Maybe it is the employee services and all of the different integrated services that they need. But then a small team can make a big impact quickly. It doesn't take a huge organization. It doesn't take a lot of time. But it does take focus, it takes some leadership, and it takes the right technology partners to help bring it to life and realize it quickly.
So it's not just an IT function or just a personnel or human capital function, but really it's an all of agency effort, sounds like.
It is really a cross-functional project. As I said, it doesn't have to be a big team, but it needs to involve the right functions who can bring their organization's viewpoint in and connect the dots for the employees.
All right. Well spoken. I want to thank today's guest. Casey Coleman is the Senior Vice President for Digital Transformation for Global Public Sector at Salesforce. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.
I'm Tom Temin. This is Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Salesforce.